The brutal reality of prison gangs. Blood sprayed across the concrete wall as the shank dug deep into the man's side. His scream echoed through the prison yard, but no guard moved fast enough to stop what was happening. Around him, a circle of inmates tightened, their faces cold, their eyes empty. It wasn't a random fight. It was an order, an execution carried out in daylight. The Aryan Brotherhood wanted him dead, and once their word was given, there was no escape. The victim dropped to his knees, gasping, looking around as if someone, anyone, might save him. But inside those walls, no one dared. Everyone knew that to help him meant signing your own death sentence. The attack ended as quickly as it began. The killers melted back into the crowd, blending in with the hundreds of men who acted like nothing happened. Blood pooled on the ground, and the victim lay still, his eyes wide open. The guards rushed in too late, whistles blowing, batons raised. The yard went silent except for the faint thump of helicopter blades circling above. And as the body was dragged away, a whisper passed through the inmates. Another gang hit. Another reminder of who really ran the prison. But how did it come to this? How did one man end up targeted for death by the most feared gang inside? That story starts long before the blood in the yard, back on the day a young man named Jason Parker first walked into California State Prison. Jason wasn't a killer. He wasn't a gang member. He was a 26-year-old who had made one big mistake, an armed robbery gone wrong. His sentence was 15 years. He thought prison would just be about serving time, maybe keeping his head down until parole. But the moment those iron gates clanged shut behind him, he realized he had stepped into a world ruled by a different law. The intake process was brutal. Guards shouted orders while stripping him of his clothes, his bell, onjings, and his dignity. When Jason was finally led into his block, dozens of eyes followed him. Inmates leaned on railings, tattoos crawling up their arms and necks. Some whistled. Others just stared, their silence heavier than words. Jason kept walking, clutching his new prison number like it was a shield. His first night was restless. Shouts echoed down the hall, the sound of fists against steel, someone screaming for a medic. Jason lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, counting the hours. He told himself he would survive, stay invisible, stay clean. But survival in prison didn't work that way. The next morning, as he lined up for breakfast, Jason felt a tap on his shoulder. A tall inmate with a swastika tattooed on his neck leaned in close. "You're with us now," the man said, his voice calm but sharp. Jason tried to protest, but the man's cold smile stopped him. "Don't worry, you'll thank us later. Out here, you're either with someone or you're dead." Jason didn't answer. He didn't need to. The Aryan Brotherhood had spoken. At first, it didn't seem so bad. They gave him food when the portions were too small. They watched his back in the showers, where stabbings were common. They made sure no one touched him. Jason thought maybe he had lucked out. But then came the favors, passing notes, delivering small packages, standing guard while deals went down. Each member pulled him deeper into their world. One day, Jason found himself holding a small, folded piece of paper, told to deliver it to another inmate across the yard. He didn't understand its importance, but he obeyed. What he didn't know was that this was how gang orders moved, coded messages hidden in tiny scraps, often inside legal documents. That little paper could mean a beating, a smuggling plan, or even a death sentence. By carrying it, Jason had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. The lows came to the guilt, the fear. He watched men get cornered and beaten until they couldn't stand. He saw one inmate dragged into a cell, only to be carried out on a stretcher hours later. Every night he told himself he wasn't one of them, that he was only doing what he had to do to survive. But deep down, he knew the truth. Once you were in, there was no way out. Weeks passed, and Jason's role grew. He was ordered to smuggle contraband hidden in food trays. He was told to keep an eye on rival gang members, memorizing their movements. Each job felt heavier than the last, but saying no was not an option. The Brotherhood didn't forgive. Then came the day that changed everything. Jason was summoned to the showers by two senior members. The steam filled the air, making it hard to see, but he could hear the whispers. One of the men handed him a sharpened piece of metal, a shank. Jason's stomach dropped. "It's time," the man said. "Prove yourself. Tonight, in the yard." Jason's heart raced. He knew exactly what they meant. He wasn't being asked. He was being ordered. If he refused, he was dead. If he obeyed, someone else would be. That night, the yard was crowded. Inmates lifted weights, some played cards, others walked laps. Jason's palms sweated as he clutched the shank hidden in his sleeve. His eyes darted, searching for the target he had been told to find. The man was sitting on a bench, talking to others, unaware of what was coming. Jason froze. Every part of him screamed to stop, to throw the weapon away, to shout for a guard. But behind him, the Brotherhood watched, waiting, judging. He took a step forward, and then shouts erupted. The target stood suddenly, pointing at Jason. Guards turned their heads. The yard fell quiet. Jason's secret was out. The Brotherhood's plan was blown, and now everyone, guards, inmates, and Jason himself, knew there was no way back. The man Jason was sent to kill locked eyes with him, his face twisting in rage. He lunged forward, his fists already swinging. Jason raised the shank, his hands shaking. Around them, the yard exploded into chaos. And then, the man's fist connected with Jason's jaw, snapping his head back. Pain shot through him, but instinct took over. Jason gripped the shank tighter, stumbling backward as the bigger inmate charged again. Around them, the yard turned into a storm. Some inmates cheered, others shouted warnings, while the guards fumbled with their radios, trying to figure out what was happening. Jason swung the shank, his hand trembling. The blade sliced air, missing its target. The other inmate laughed, a low, dangerous sound. He grabbed Jason by the collar, slamming him against the fence so hard the chain links rattled. Jason gasped, trying to suck in air. The man raised his fist again, ready to crush his face. Then chaos erupted. From the corner of his eye, Jason saw 3 Aryan Brotherhood members rushing in. They weren't going to let their recruit fail. Each carried makeshift weapons, razor blades melted into toothbrush handles, sharpened steel hidden in socks. They descended on the target with terrifying speed. Jason barely slipped away before the man was swarmed. The attack was savage. Blood spilled as the man screamed, his voice drowning under the sound of boots stomping and fists smashing. Jason stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. He hadn't killed the man, but now, watching, he realized he might as well have. By carrying that weapon, by being part of the plan, he was tied to the blood spilling on the ground. The guards charged in too late, again. Pepper spray filled the air, making Jason's eyes burn. Whistles shrieked. Inmates dropped to the ground, hands behind their heads. The Brotherhood members scattered like shadows, slipping their weapons into drains, under benches, anywhere the guards wouldn't look. When the dust settled, Jason was on his knees, coughing, the shank still clenched in his fist. The yard was on lockdown within minutes. Every petioles. Ney was herded back into their cells. Jason's heart sank as the metal door slammed shut behind him. He knew the guards had seen him. He knew they had found him holding the weapon, and he knew what the Brotherhood would do if he talked. That night was a low point. Jason sat on his bunk, staring at the floor, the sound of distant shouts echoing down the block. His cellmate, a quiet older man named Ramirez, shook his head. "You just made yourself a pawn, kid," he said softly, "and pawns don't last long in here." Jason couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man's blood, heard his screams. But worse than that was the realization that he wasn't free anymore. He was owned. The Brotherhood had dragged him in, and now he couldn't leave, not without paying the ultimate price. The next morning, the guards dragged Jason to the interrogation room. A detective sat across from him, dropping a folder full of photos on the table. One photo slid toward Jason, the bloodied face of the man from last night. "You want to tell me why your fingerprints are on the weapon?" the detective asked. Jason swallowed hard. His throat felt like sandpaper. He wanted to say everything. He wanted to tell the truth, to beg for protection. But the memory of the Brotherhood members watching him in the yard stopped him cold. He shook his head. "I don't know anything," he whispered. The detective leaned back, smirking. "Then you're either the dumbest man in here or the deadest." Jason was thrown back into his cell with no answers, no protection. The Brotherhood rewarded him later that night. A carton of cigarettes, a piece of chocolate, even a pat on the back. To them, Jason had passed the test. He had stayed quiet. He had proven loyalty. But inside, Jason was falling apart. He knew the man they had attacked wouldn't forget. That man had friends, dangerous ones. Prison gangs didn't forgive, and they didn't let things go. Jason could already feel eyes burning into him at chow, in the yard, even in the showers. Whispers followed him everywhere. The days crawled by, filled with tensio. Then, Jason tried to keep his head down, but every moment felt like he was standing on a trap door, waiting for it to swing open. Ramirez warned him again. You can't serve two masters, kid. The Brotherhood may protect you from one side, but the others are watching, and they'll come for you. Jason didn't want to believe it. He told himself he could survive, that maybe, just maybe, he could keep balancing on the edge without falling. But deep down, he knew Ramirez was right. And then it happened. One evening, during dinner, Jason carried his tray back to his table. He sat down, trying not to draw attention. But the moment he lifted his spoon, someone slid into the seat across from him. It was a member of the Mexican mafia, his arms covered in ink, his eyes sharp and cold. You got in deep fast, the man said quietly, leaning close so only Jason could hear. Too fast. And now, you owe. Jason froze, the spoon trembling in his hand. Oh, what? He whispered. The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Balance. Blood for blood. They hit one of ours. You were part of it. So, now, we're coming for you. Jason's stomach dropped. His hand shook so badly the spoon clattered to the table. He tried to speak, but the man was already gone, melting back into the crowd. Jason sat frozen in place, his chest tight, his mind racing. He knew exactly what those words meant. The Brotherhood might protect him for now, but the Mafia's reach was long. That night, as the lights went out and the block went dark, Jason lay awake, listening. Every footstep outside his cell made him flinch. Every whisper sounded like it was meant for him. His heart raced, waiting, knowing something was coming. And just before midnight, he heard it. The sound of keys turning in the cell door, the heavy iron lock sliding open, and shadows moving inside. The cell door creaked open, slow and careful, like whoever was entering didn't want to wake Jason. But Jason was already awake, his body stiff, his breath shallow. He glanced at Ramirez, his cellmate, who sat up on his bunk, eyes narrowing. Neither spoke. 3 figures slipped inside, their faces hidden in the dark. Jason saw the glint of metal in one man's hand, a shank. His stomach dropped. The Mexican Mafia had come. Don't move, a voice hissed. Jason froze. His heart pounded so hard it echoed in his ears. One of the men stepped forward, pressing the shank against Jason's throat. The cold steel made him shiver. Another blocked Ramirez, warning him to stay put. Jason's cellmate raised his hands, his face calm, but his eyes were filled with pity. He had seen this before. He knew how it usually ended. Debt has to be paid, the leader whispered. And tonight, you're the one who pays it. Jason's mind raced. He thought of his family, of the mistake that landed him here, of every bad choice that chained him to this moment. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He wanted to fight, but his body felt heavy, useless. Then the first strike came. The blade slashed across his shoulder, hot pain exploding down his arm. Jason shouted, falling off his bunk. The men swarmed him, kicking, stabbing, their movements quick and merciless. He tried to crawl toward the bars, but a boot slammed into his ribs, rolling him back. Ramirez shouted for the guards, pounding on the bars with his fists. "Co! Cell breach! Help!" His voice echoed down the block, waking other inmates. Soon, the whole tier roared with noise, banging, shouting, whistling. But Jason knew the truth. The guards were slow at night. By the time they arrived, he might already be dead. Blood pooled under him, his vision blurred. He heard the Mafia men breathing heavy, whispering to each other in Spanish. He caught only one word clearly: finish. Jason braced himself, knowing the next stab might be the last. But then, something unexpected happened. The cell erupted in chaos again, not from the attackers but from outside. A group of Aryan Brother. Oud members had stormed down the tier, their boots pounding against the concrete, their voices loud. One of them carried a broom handle sharpened into a spear. Another swung a lock tied to a belt. They had come for Jason. The Mafia men cursed, backing toward the door. The Brotherhood forced their way in, weapons clashing, fists flying. The cell became a battlefield, bodies smashing into bunks, blood splattering against the walls. Jason crawled into the corner, clutching his side, too weak to move, his eyes wide with terror as the two gangs tore into each other just feet away. The noise grew deafening. Ramirez ducked low, shielding himself from the chaos. "Stay down, kid," he shouted, pulling Jason closer to the wall. "Stay down, or you're dead." The Brotherhood fought like men possessed. One mafia member was dragged out into the hallway, screaming as fists pummeled his face. Another collapsed on the floor, motionless. The last one tried to run, but the broom's handle caught him in the back, dropping him instantly. Within minutes, it was over. The mafia's attack had failed. The Brotherhood stood victorious, panting, blood covering their arms and shirts. One of them turned, glaring at Jason. "You see," he said, his voice calm despite the carnage. "We protect our own. Don't forget who saved your life tonight." Jason nodded weakly, though his stomach twisted. Saved? It didn't feel like salvation. It felt like chains tightening around his neck. He wasn't free. He was theirs, more than ever before. The guards finally stormed in, sirens blaring, pepper spray clouding the air. Inmates scattered, pretending to be innocent. But the evidence was everywhere. Blood, broken bodies, and Jason barely clinging to consciousness. Dragged to the infirmary, Jason drifted in and out of awareness. He heard doctors shouting, felt needles piercing his skin, smelled the sharp sting of disinfectant. But beneath it all, one thought gnawed at him, louder than the pain. He had been marked. The Mexican mafia wouldn't stop. They never did. And the Brotherhood wouldn't let him go. He was trapped between giants, his life a tug-of-war where the rope would eventually snap. When he finally woke in the infirmary hours later, Ramirez sat beside him, his expression grim. "You're alive," he said softly, "but listen to me. This isn't survival anymore. This is war, and you're right in the middle of it." Jason stared at the ceiling, the hum of the lights above drilling into his ears. His body ached, but worse was the dread settling in his chest. He knew Ramirez was right. He was no longer just a prisoner doing time. He was a soldier in a war he never wanted to fight. And wars like this only ended one of two ways: buried in the ground or buried in blood.